Ever since LSAC removed the logic game section from the LSAT, they started incorporating more formal logic in the logical reasoning section. So it's more important than ever to be able to interpret and translate conditional statements. So today we're going to cover several formal logic drills specifically related to the logical reasoning section of the LSAT, some easy, some intermediate, and some difficult. This first one to start with is a relatively easier one. That's why you see the green circle here. We'll walk through it together. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but do commit to something. Number one, during a lecture in Legally Blonde, Professor Stromwell tells the class, you succeed only if you brief every single assigned case, even the boring ones. Let's translate this. If you brief every case, then you succeed. That's choice A. B, if you succeed, then you brief every assigned case. C, if you skip some cases, you still may succeed. Or D, succeeding and briefing cases are unrelated tasks. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. And if you're not sure, just put a question mark, but please do commit to something and share your thoughts, share your result. So we've got Edward here saying A. Now here's the thing. Let's look at the statement that Professor Stromwell said. You succeed only if you brief every single assigned case. Only if is a necessary condition indicator, meaning that whatever immediately follows that statement is the necessary condition coming after the arrow, and the other part of the statement comes before the arrow. So this statement properly translated is actually succeeding requires briefing. Choice A says briefing requires succeeding, or briefing guarantees succeeding. So A is actually a reversal of what we want to see. We want to see succeed on the left and brief on the right. A has brief on the left and succeed on the right. So I know a couple of folks are saying A, but the answer is in fact B. If you succeed, then you brief every assigned case. So A is an improper reversal of what we want, confusing necessary and sufficient conditions, and choice B, as in Bravo, is actually correct. So again, only if introduces the necessary condition, functioning like the arrow. We want succeed arrow brief, which choice B, as in Bravo, actually has. Let's go on to the next one. Number two, in Suits, Jessica tells an associate, you advance only if you meet every filing deadline, including Harvey's last-minute surprises. Let's translate this statement. A, if you meet every deadline, then you advance. B, if you advance, then you met every deadline. C, if you miss one deadline, advancement stays possible. Or D, advancement occurs unless deadlines accumulate. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D, and share what you're thinking. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark. So again, we have this phrase, only if. You advance only if you meet every filing deadline. And so we want to make sure we're properly translating. Only if introduces the necessary condition. Whatever immediately follows it is after the arrow, and the other part is before the arrow. We have some folks dropping answers in the chat. Let's see here. We got Edward saying B, Feria, Valentina, Air Force all saying A. So again, advance only if you meet means advance arrow meet. Advance is on the left, meet is on the right. Advance is the sufficient condition, meeting is the necessary condition. So the answer to number two is in fact B, as in Bravo. If you advance, then you must have met every single deadline. A is an improper reversal, confusing necessary and sufficient conditions. So we got here Edward saying B is correct, some other folks saying A. A is in fact unfortunately not correct for this one because it's improperly reversing necessary and sufficient conditions. A little bit tricky, but it takes some getting used to. The more you do these, the more you drill them, the more it becomes automatic, which is why, of course, we're covering them today. Let's go on to number three. On The Good Wife, Carrie explains a reversal occurs unless the record is completely airtight. Let's translate this. A, if the record is complete, then reversal occurs. B, if reversal occurs, then the record was complete. C, if the record is not complete, then reversal occurs. Or D, reversal and completeness cannot occur together. Sonartiste is saying, oh no. Yeah, so it's getting a little bit more difficult here. These do take some practice. They do take some time to get, but we'll get them over time as we just keep doing more and more of them. That's the name of the game here. We keep practicing, we keep drilling, and we'll get these over time. So the word unless, by the way, is a more tricky conditional indicator. We can take unless to equal if not. In other words, you take unless, you just substitute in the phrase if not. So if the record is not completely airtight, then a reversal occurs. And so we have one answer in the chat here applying that idea, right? But we got Edward saying D, reversal and completeness cannot occur together, meaning they are mutually exclusive or cannot coexist. That's saying there's no relationship at all. Do we necessarily know that from this statement, though? This statement says there is some relationship. We got Passion saying C. If the record's not complete, then reversal occurs. Anyone else want to drop an answer in the chat? You know, we have some folks revolting here entirely, just not wanting to do this, but of course, we got to cover it on the LSAT. That's part of the process here. Formal logic is more important than ever before. It's being incorporated more and more into logical reasoning, so we got to be able to interpret these. Valentina says B, Zuli says B. If reversal occurs, then the record was complete. So again, unless equals if not. So if the record, I'll just prephrase or predict the answer here. If the record is not completely airtight, then reversal occurs. C says, if the record is not complete, then reversal occurs. That's a pretty good match. The answer is in fact choice C. Edward says, yeah, C is better. Feria says C. Yes, the answer is in fact C. B as in Bravo is not the same, of course. That's a bit of a reversal of choice C, but also saying complete rather than not complete. So not the same thing. So yeah, words in this category are unless, except, until, and without, all equivalent to the phrase if not. So whenever you see one of those words, unless, except, until, or if not, unless, except, until, or without, you sub in the phrase if not to translate that statement. Next, number 4. In Law and Order, a judge says the only dismissed cases are the ones missing probable cause. Let's translate that statement. A says if a case is dismissed, it lacks probable cause. B says if a case lacks probable cause, it is dismissed. C says some cases lacking probable cause survive review. Or D, dismissal requires multiple defects. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but do commit to something. And yes, these are confusing, but you'll get them more as you do more of them. That's why we're drilling these. We get them wrong now, so we don't get them wrong on test day. That's the work. So hint here for you, the phrase the only is a sufficient condition indicator. So you can just sub in the word if when you see the phrase if only. So the judge here is saying the only dismissed cases, we say if a case is dismissed, then it's missing probable cause. And one of the choices says pretty much that. Choice A, which a lot of folks got, we got Zuli, Feria, Passion, Sanartista all saying A. A is in fact correct. Well done. So the only dismissed cases are the ones missing probable cause. If a case is dismissed, then it lacks probable cause. Well done, folks, you got it. Number 5. On Better Call Saul, Cliff Main states, exactly one junior associate must review each draft, no more, no less. Let's translate that statement. A, at least one junior associate reviews each draft. B, no draft may have more than one reviewer. C, each draft has exactly one junior reviewer. Or D, some drafts may skip junior review. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark. Yeah, we're on the right track here. We're starting to get this, right? Awesome. Okay, so when you have your answer, please drop it in, A, B, C, or D. We're just translating here, so we're finding a logically equivalent statement to the original in the stimulus or in the argument. So stimulus says exactly one. A says at least, B says no, C says each, D says some. So already we could say to ourselves, well, at least one and in A and some in D are not really equivalent. to the original, so we could probably just knock those out, right? Then B says no draft may have more than one. C says each draft has exactly one. So which of those better fits the statement in the stimulus? B saying no draft may have more than one, but that's not saying exactly what the stimulus said. The stimulus said at exactly one, no more, no less. So for that reason, C as in Charlie is a better answer, better fits what the Plithmane was saying. So wonderful, folks. We got Edward, Zuli, Passion all saying C. The answer is in fact C. Well done, folks. So we're 5 in so far. Out of these first 5, please drop in the chat how many you got right. Were you 5 for 5? 4 for 4 if you came in a little bit late. 4 out of 5, whatever you got, drop in the chat so we have a sense of where you're at. And if you're finding these difficult, if you want some more support talking through your LSAT prep, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. Link below the video on YouTube, linked pinned in the comments as well, link in the bio on Instagram. To book that free LSAT lesson with me, we can talk through your situation, craft a plan of attack. I know some folks are having a bit more trouble with these formal logic drills than some previous ones we've done other days. That's okay though. We'll keep drilling these every single week. On Thursdays is the plan. We'll cover formal logic drills like these, navigating conditional statements. And of course, every weekday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, we're doing these free LSAT classes here on YouTube. Next, number 6. In suits, Lewis says that if a memo contains an undisclosed conflict, Harvey rejects it. And if Harvey rejects a memo, Mike must revise it. What can we infer? A, if Harvey rejects a memo, it had a conflict. B, if Mike revises a memo, Harvey rejected it. C, if a memo has a conflict, Mike revises it. Or D, if Mike revises a memo, it had a conflict. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but do commit to something. So in this argument, we have, or this fact set, we have multiple conditional statements, right? If conflict, or if undisclosed conflict, Harvey rejects. If Harvey rejects, Mike must revise. So that forms a chain. If undisclosed conflict, Harvey rejects. If Harvey rejects, Mike revises. So what is A then B, B then C, therefore A requires C. Now, Passion saying C and D seem the same. Well, they have a lot in common. They're dealing with the same variables, but they are the reversal of each other. And conditionality matters. The order matters, right? So in choice C, the memo having the conflict is the sufficient condition. In choice D as in delta, the conflict is the necessary condition. So they are not logically equivalent because they are the reversal of each other, and directionality matters. You can't go the wrong way on a one-way street. So in this stimulus, in the fact set in the original statement, we have if memo has a conflict or undisclosed conflict, Harvey rejects. If Harvey rejects, Mike revises. Therefore, if we have an undisclosed conflict, then Mike must revise it. So out of the options here, D as in delta is the best fit, matching the directionality of the conditional statements dealing with that change. So Feria asks, so the direction in the choices must match the stimulus? Yes. I'll say the short answer here is yes, meaning that the order of the statements in the conditional matters a great deal. We can't go backwards on an arrow, just like you can't go the wrong way on a one-way street. So in other words, if you had a statement saying X requires Y, having an answer saying Y requires X would not be logically equivalent. That's going backwards, and we can't do that. Cool? All right, awesome. Tough question, but we're going to keep going. We're going to keep practicing these. Next, number 7. On The Good Wife, Diane notes that if evidence is privileged, it is excluded, and anything excluded forces an immediate sidebar with the judge. What can we infer? A, if evidence triggers a sidebar, it was privileged. B, if evidence is privileged, it triggers a sidebar. C, if evidence is excluded, it might be privileged. Or D, sidebar discussions prohibit exclusion. What can we infer? And note, by the way, that of course, again, directionality matters. Choices A and B, for example, are the reversal of each other. They are not logically equivalent to each other. They're different. We have in A, we have sidebar in the sufficient. privileged in the necessary. In B, we have privileged in the sufficient and sidebar in the necessary. So we have a couple of folks here saying choice A, but I want to caution you, look at where the sidebar statement appears. It's at the very end of the stimulus or of the passage, right? So it's the necessary condition at the end of the chain. And then in choice A, which I saw a lot of folks are choosing, sidebar is in the sufficient of choice A, right? So not the same thing. We have this chain of privileged, then excluded, excluded, then sidebar. So the chain goes privileged, then excluded, then sidebar. A requires B requires C. So Denisha says B, so B, exactly right, privileged, then sidebar. That's like jumping over the B to say A to B to C, therefore A to C. So exactly right, folks are getting. I see Passion says B, Edward, Zuli, Valentina, all saying B now. You all got it. Fantastic. Well done. Next, number 8. In Law and Order, a prosecutor says if a witness recants, credibility collapses. Whenever credibility collapses, we negotiate a deal. What can we infer? A, negotiation sometimes follows recantation. B, recantation requires immediate negotiation. C, recantation guarantees negotiation. Or D, negotiation eliminates credibility issues. What can we infer? When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but do commit to an answer. A lot of folks starting to drop answers in here. Awesome. Note, by the way, that B and C are quite similar, but there's a key difference between them. B as in Bravo says immediate negotiation, which we did not have in the original, right? The original just said we negotiate a deal, didn't say it was immediate though. And I see a ton of folks getting this. Denisha, Feria, Zuli, Sanartista, Edward, Valentina, all saying choice C. Fantastic. The answer is in fact C. Well done. You're all getting the hang of it. Amazing. Number 9. In Better Call Saul, Kim explains, if sanctions are likely, we investigate. If we investigate, we document every interview. What can we infer? A, if sanctions are likely, interviews are documented. B, if interviews are documented, sanctions are likely. C, documentation prevents sanctions entirely. Or D, sanctions occur if interviews are documented. What can we infer? When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but do commit to something. So directionality matters a great deal. Also, qualifiers matter a great deal as well. And so Kim says, if sanctions are likely. In contrast, choice D says sanctions occur, but it dropped the likelihood part, which was an important part of what Kim was saying there. I see a ton of folks getting this. Awesome. We got Passion, Denisha, Edward, Zuli, Feria, Valentina, all saying choice A. A is in fact correct. Just connecting that chain together. Well done, folks. You all got it. Number 10. In Suits, if a contract is ambiguous, Donna alerts Harvey. If she alerts him, he consults case law. And whenever he consults case law, negotiations pause. What can we infer? Choice A. If negotiations pause, the contract is ambiguous. B. If Harvey consults case law, negotiations never pause. C. Negotiations pause only when contracts lack ambiguity. Or D. Ambiguity guarantees a consultation with case law. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark. Give folks a minute. This one's a bit harder. That's why you have the red circle there. So I saw someone was looking at the possibility of choice C. Negotiations pause only when contracts lack ambiguity. Note where the phrase negotiations pause appears. It's at the very end of the passage, and it's not guaranteeing or causing anything else. In other words, Negotiations pausing does not serve as the sufficient condition for anything else to occur, so it wouldn't be the beginning of a conditional in the answer. So I would knock out choice C for that reason. I see a couple folks here dropping in another answer choice, choice D. Zuli says D, Denisha says D, Edward says D. And in fact, choice D is correct because ambiguity kicks off the conditional chain and it leads to a Harvey consulting case law. They could have gone further and said ambiguity guarantees negotiations pausing. They didn't carry it all the way through, but they don't have to. They can end it a little bit earlier. So this conditional is a bit more complicated. This chain has 4 different variables: ambiguous, alerts, consults, and pausing. Contract's ambiguous, Donna alerts, he consults case law, negotiations pause. So it goes A, arrow B, arrow C, arrow D. And this choice C, the correct answer choice D is just basically going A requires C rather than A requires D, but that's fine, still a valid inference. So we're 10 in so far, folks. Out of these first 10, please drop in the chat how many you got right out of the ones that you did. If you did all 10, you got 10 for 10, awesome. If you got 8 for 8, also fine. I know folks were getting some wrong earlier, maybe doing a bit better now. So share your accuracy update in the chat when you can so we have a sense of where you're at. In the meantime, number 11, on The Good Wife, an associate insists that you win only if the motion is timely, means that timeliness guarantees a win. Identify what's going on in this passage. A, are they confusing necessary with sufficient conditions? B, are they equating correlation with causation? C, are they claiming timeliness guarantees failure instead? Or are they treating timeliness as irrelevant? Interpret or identify what they're doing in this passage with regard to the conditional statement. So the associate is saying that you win only if the motion is timely, and they're interpreting that to mean that timeliness guarantees a win. So are they committing a flaw? If so, what flaw would that be? Identify what's going on or articulate what's happening in this passage. We got a couple folks dropping answers in here. Let's see, we got someone, Denisha saying A, Edward saying B, Zuli saying B. So you win only if the motion is timely. That's a general conditional statement, kind of functioning like a rule of thumb or a principle. And they're saying that means timeliness guarantees a win. But the quoted statement is saying winning requires timeliness. And so I would interpret this as being a reversal or confusing necessary and sufficient conditions. Passion says C for confused. So C says timeliness guarantees failure. Instead, I saw that someone else, Ginger, also said C, but let's look at what's happening here. Winning requires timeliness, or winning requires timeliness essentially is what they're saying, right? You win only if it's timely, only if is a necessary condition indicator, meaning that if you win, then you must have been timely. And the associate's interpreting that to say timeliness guarantees a win. They are going backwards on the arrow, improperly reversing the nature of the conditional statement. So the answer is in fact choice A, confusing a necessary condition with a sufficient one. Now, TG Law asks, why not B compared to A? So why not correlation causation? Because correlation causation is something different. Correlation causation would be saying we have an association between two things, nothing more. There is a relationship between the two. And so that means that because there is an association between them, one must therefore cause the other. But we didn't just have a mere association between two things in the quoted statement. The quoted statement, you win only if timely, is actually a conditional itself, meaning that our given statement is stronger than being just an association. It is an actual conditional itself. So we don't have any mere correlation here. We're dealing with conditionals all throughout. And so yes, the answer is A. As Faria says, Edward says, yes, the answer is A. Let's go on to 12. On Law and Order, a trainee argues that because most suppressed statements involve coercion, every suppressed statement must be coerced. Identify what's going on here. A, treating most as exactly half. B, treating most as all. C, concluding coercion is rare among suppressed statements. Or D, assuming coerced statements are always admitted. What's going on here? Is there a flaw? If so, what flaw is it? So they're saying because most statements involve coercion, every suppressed statement must be coerced. We got a couple folks dropping answers here in the chat. Zuli says B. San Artista says C. Edward, Passion, Feria, Denisha, all saying choice B as in Bravo. The answer is in fact B as in Bravo. Yes, treating most as all, which yes, Feria is a form of generalization or overgeneralization. Well done, exactly right. So yes, the answer is B as Valdo. Well done. So they're treating most as all. Evidence about most is then expanded in scope, generalized, overgeneralized to be all, which of course they should not have done. If your evidence is regarding most, your conclusion can also only be about most as well. Number 13, in suits, a clerk says, some conflicts are trivial, so conflicts never require disclosure. Identify what's going on here. A, treating some as indicating necessity. B, assuming trivial conflicts outweigh severe ones. C, overgeneralizing from a subset to all cases. Or D, concluding disclosure increases liability in every case. Identify what is going on here. They said some are trivial, so conflicts never require disclosure. So we got Edward saying C, Osvaldo saying C, Passion saying C, Zuli saying D. So most folks saying C, some folks saying D. Valentina saying C. Okay, so we have here some in the evidence, never in the conclusion. So that's going from some to all. Just like in the earlier example, we went from most to all. So again, an overgeneralization. D says disclosure increases liability in every case. They're not really covering liability in this passage, in this argument, nothing about that in particular. So I would go with C for that reason. They are, of course, concluding a bit much regarding disclosure, but not in the way that D is talking about. So C is in fact the answer. Well done, folks. Then we had someone saying C or A, looking at A in particular, treating some as indicating necessity. Well, in fact, they're treating some to say that there is not a necessity. They're saying that they never require. So I would say maybe treating some as indicating a lack of necessity, perhaps. Number 14, in Better Call Saul, a reviewer argues that since none of the recent appeals succeeded, no future appeal can succeed either. Identify what's going on. A, assuming past failure guarantees future failure. B, concluding appeals are logically impossible. C, treating a single success as overturning precedent. Or D, equating number of appeals with likelihood. Identify what is going on here. Since none of the recent ones succeeded, no future appeal can succeed either. So of course, there is a flaw going on here. With these identified questions, it's a mix of formal logic with flaws inherent within them. So figure out what's wrong with this statement. Nothing recent succeeded, so they're assuming that nothing in the future can succeed either. Saying that what happened in the past guarantees what will happen in the future. I see a ton of folks drop their answers in the chat. Awesome. Zuli, Passion, Osvaldo, Feria, Denisha, Ginger, Edward, Valentina, all saying A. Well done. The answer is in fact A. Nice. Assuming past failure guarantees future failure. Of course, the past does not guarantee the future. It can provide evidence about what is likely, but it's not a guarantee. Number 15. On The Good Wife, a judge says one excluded exhibit was unreliable, so they must all be unreliable. Identify what's going on here. A, assuming exclusion never relates to reliability. B, confusing evidentiary weight with procedure. C, claiming unreliable exhibits can never be excluded. Or D, generalizing from a single case to all similar ones. Identify what's going on here, essentially. We have an example of 1 as the evidence, and assuming from that 1, they must all be that way. We've got a couple answers coming in here. Awesome. We got here Denisha, Passion, Zuli, Osvaldo, all saying D. Generalizing from a single case to all similar ones. Awesome. Well done. Exactly right. Once again, overgeneralization based on an example or set that's far too limited. Well done, Edward. Ginger as well. Fantastic. Valentina got it also. Great. So we're 15 in. Out of these 15, quick update, folks. Let us know where you're at accuracy-wise, how many you got right out of the number that you did. And by the way, folks, we're doing these classes every single weekday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. If you're finding these helpful, please spread the word. I don't do any advertising for these free classes. They only spread through word of mouth. And so if you're in any groups or forums or Discord, Slack, whatever, please share the word about these. Share the link to the YouTube channel. Really appreciate your support. The more this grows, the more of these I'll keep doing, and I'll expand them over time. We got Edward 12 out of 15. Awesome. Passion got 12. Valentina 10 for 14. Osvaldo 4 for 4. Awesome. Ginger says very helpful. Thank you. Appreciate it. Please spread the word. That's the best way you could support this. We'll keep going. Number 16. In Legally Blonde, L says the study group meets only if the elected leader shows up, though classmates sometimes gather casually in the lounge. Let's translate this statement, given that we have only if. The group meets only if the elected leader shows up. So only if, of course, introduces the necessary condition establishing a requirement, meaning if the group met, then the leader must have shown up. Then gathering casually is a separate thing. That would not constitute a formal meeting of the group, though. Got a mix of answers coming in here. So again, the group meets only if the leader shows up. The only if indicates necessary condition, not a sufficient one. So the leader showing up is a requirement for the group to meet, but the leader showing up itself is not a guarantee that the group will meet. So I saw some folks who kind of mixed initially on this one, had a mix of C's and D's at first. Now we got a bunch of A's coming in here. We got Valentina, Osvaldo, TG Law, Edward all saying A. Zuli saying A. Fantastic. The answer is in fact A. The meeting happens only if the leader was attending. But C said the leader's presence guarantees a full meeting. That's an improper reversal. The leader's presence is necessary, but the leader being there is not sufficient. There might be other requirements as well. And TG's law is asking what time do these classes occur? Same time as right now, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific every weekday. Next, number 17. In suits, Donna explains that a compliance review happens unless the client pulls out, though last quarter's reviews paused for budget reasons. Let's translate this statement. The review happens unless the client pulls out. So remember, unless, like the words except, until, and without, all relate to all equal the phrase if not. So if the client doesn't pull out, the review happens. So my prephrase for this, my prediction going into the choices would be, if the client does not pull out, then the compliance review happens, because unless equals if not. A lot of folks dropping answers in here. Initially, some folks were saying A, but then we have some folks saying B. We got Passion, Valentina, Osvaldo, all saying choice B. Denisha saying B. We had some A's initially, but now we got B's. And so yes, the answer is in fact B. If the client does not withdraw, meaning they didn't pull out, then the review occurs, meaning it happens. Choice A was a reversal of that, saying if withdraw, then review must still occur. So a little bit of a negation of the withdrawal, but not the other part. So I imagine that choice A might be tempting if you're not properly translating the word unless. But if you take unless to mean if not, then B follows pretty smoothly. Nice. Number 18, in Law and Order, a detective writes that exactly one eyewitness is fully reliable, though others provide partial background context. Let's translate this statement. A, one and only one eyewitness is reliable. B, no more than one witness may testify. C, at least one eyewitness is reliable. Or D, all witnesses must support the same account. Let's translate this statement. Take it from the original into a translated conditional. Exactly one eyewitness is fully reliable, though others provide some context. So what's the best translation of the conditional that we're looking at here? So we got some folks here saying C, at least one eyewitness is reliable. But the quoted statement says exactly one eyewitness is fully reliable. Bit different there, right? So we're saying in the original fully reliable, meaning reliable period. Partial context, not the same thing as reliability. Might give some information, but maybe questionable that you can't really count on. So I saw some folks saying C initially, now switching to A. Osvaldo says A. Valentina says A. Zuli says A. The answer is in fact A. Yes, well done. One and only one equals exactly, meaning reliable. Yes, so A is the answer. I see folks are getting it. And so TG Law is saying C as fully reliable and reliable are different conditions. I don't know about that, right? So fully reliable and there's no definition here of partial reliability. They say partial background context in the original, not necessarily the same thing as being reliable. They said exactly one is fully reliable. A is the best match for that. C, we don't have that from the passage. Maybe it's possible, but we don't know that from what we're given. Number 19, in The Good Wife, Carrie notes, a motion succeeds only if both filings are timely, although court calendars frequently shift. Let's translate this. A, if filings are timely, the motion automatically succeeds. B, a motion succeeds when either filing is timely. C, a motion may succeed even if filings are late. Or D, if the motion succeeds, both filings were timely. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark. Remember, the phrase only if introduces the necessary condition, meaning that whatever came around it, aside from that, is going to be the sufficient and put before the arrow, but only if functions like an arrow. So motion succeeds only if both are timely, meaning if succeeds, then timely. So we had an A initially, now we've got folks saying D. Osvaldo says D, Zuli says D, Passion says D, Valentina says D. Yep, fantastic, exactly right. We basically take only if to introduce necessary condition. So both filings were timely comes after the arrow. Motion succeeds comes before the arrow. So if succeeds, then both were timely. D is in fact the answer. Well done, folks. Number 20, in Better Call Saul, a memo states a sanction occurs if and only if counsel omits mandatory disclosures, even though optional disclosures vary. Let's translate this statement. A, if mandatory disclosures are omitted, a sanction must occur. B, a sanction occurs when any disclosure is omitted. C, a sanction occurs exactly when mandatory disclosures are omitted. Or D, mandatory disclosures are optional in all cases. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark. So if and only if, it's a tricky one. If introduces the sufficient condition, only if introduces the necessary condition, so it functions like a double or biconditional arrow pointing in both directions. So sanction occurs if and only if counsel omits mandatory disclosures. I see some folks dropping answers in the chat. Nice. So the if and only if is like a double arrow, kind of like an equal sign, meaning exactly, no more, no less. They are equivalent. It is definitional. So omitting mandatory disclosures is both necessary and sufficient for sanctions to occur. And that is exactly what choice C says. A lot of folks got it. Awesome. TG Law, Zuli, Edward, Valentina, all saying choice C. The sanction occurs exactly when and only when we have the omission. And so Passion says C, but why not A? So yes, A is contained within the passage or the stimulus, but it is not equivalent to the stimulus. Our job here is to translate what came from the passage. So A has the if, but doesn't have the only if. We need both to translate what was said in the original. And choice C, as in Charlie, says exactly, meaning no more, no less. Exactly represents or reflects the if and only if. A has the if, but is missing the only if portion, so it's not equivalent. You might be able to infer A from the passage, but it is not a translation of the passage. So kind of technical, but that's what the LSAT's all about. So we're 20 in so far, folks. Out of these first 20, let me know how many you got right. Were you 20 for 20, 15 for 20 if you came late, however many you got to do? Just drop in the chat to update us on your accuracy level. Hopefully these are getting easier as we're doing more of them over time. It's the drills, the repetition helps you get that pattern recognition. And by the way, if you want to talk through any of these drills, you want to go through some harder LSAT material with me, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson at unpluggedprep.com/start. Link below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat here as well, to book your free call with me to talk through your LSAT situation, help you craft a plan of attack. Edward is 16 for 20. Valentina is 15 for 19. Passion is 15 for 20. Osvaldo's 8 for 9. You all are doing great. Awesome accuracy. You guys are doing awesome. These are tough questions. TG Law asks, would it be safe to say a necessary condition overrules a sufficient? I wouldn't really put it that way, I don't think. I mean, I think overrules may not be the right term for this. I mean, necessary establishes a requirement. That's all I'll say. Sufficient gives you a guarantee. Necessary gives you a requirement. We could talk through examples, of course, as we are going through these. So if there are any contexts where we are going over another example you want to ask about a particular, we can, of course, go through it all. I think it's harder to do it in theory, better to do it in practice. Passion says harder. I'm hanging on by a thread, LOL. It's okay. I mean, we're always talking through the explanations for all of these. These are tough, but the idea being you get them wrong now so you don't get them wrong on test day. Number 21, in Legally Blonde, L notes, if the brief is incomplete, review is delayed, and the brief is incomplete before class. What can we infer? So we've got a conditional statement. Then we have a concrete situation. If incomplete, review is delayed. Then we have a situation where the brief was actually incomplete. So what can we infer as a result? So a conditional statement and then the activation of the conditional. So incomplete, arrow delayed. We then learn incomplete. So we can infer that, therefore, a delay will happen. Edward's got it, choice B. Zuli says B as well. Denisha says B as well. Awesome. Y'all are getting it. Osvaldo says B. Exactly right. Well done. TG Law says B. Great. Number 22. In Suits, Harvey says, if the deal closes, negotiations happened. And if negotiations happened, records were exchanged. The deal closes. So what can we infer? So we have two conditionals now, and they chain together. Deal closed, arrow negotiations happen, arrow reviews exchanged, records exchanged. Then we have the activation of the initial sufficient condition. The deal closes, kicking off that chain reaction or domino effect. The deal closed, therefore negotiations, therefore records exchanged. C as in Charlie says records were exchanged. That is the answer. Well done, folks. You all got it. Denisha, Edward, Valentina, Zuli, Osvaldo, all saying choice C. C is correct. Well done. Passion got it as well. TG Law got it as well. Awesome, folks. Number 23. In the Good Wife, report states, if the auditor objects, the panel reopens findings. And the panel reopens findings in this case. What can we infer? A, the auditor must have objected here. B, the auditor definitely did not object. C, the report proves an objection occurred. Or D, the information does not establish whether the auditor objected. So, what can we infer? Getting a little bit trickier here. So, we have here, if the auditor objects, the panel reopens findings. We have a conditional. Then we have a concrete statement, the panel reopens findings. In the previous examples, the concrete statement was the activation of the sufficient. The part before the arrow, the if statement. Now, they're giving us as a concrete variable, the panel reopens findings. That is the necessary condition, the part after the arrow, and that does not tell us anything. It's a trick. So the panel reopens findings means we cannot infer anything else from that statement. Like if you have a statement, X requires Y, and we learn Y, you cannot infer X. That's going backwards on the arrow. So for that reason, I know a lot of you chose A initially. The answer is in fact D, as in Delta. Osvaldo got it. TG Law, Valentina is getting it as well. Yes, the answer is D. The information does not establish whether the auditor objected. We cannot tell whether they objected or not because we cannot go backwards on the arrow. That's the trick here. So when you learn the necessary condition, you cannot infer the sufficient as a result, meaning you don't know whether the sufficient occurred or not. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. We cannot say. Nice, folks. A little bit harder sometimes. Number 24, in Law and Order, a supervisor writes, if evidence is mislabeled, review intensifies. If review intensifies, deadlines extend. And deadlines extend only if evidence is mislabeled. Deadlines extend in this case. What can we infer? A, evidence was mislabeled in this case. B, review did not intensify for this case. C, deadlines extend without any underlying cause. Or D, evidence may or may not have been mislabeled. What can we infer? Again, a little bit trickier. So we have a chain reaction, evidence mislabeled, review intensifies, deadlines extend. So it's a chain reaction. Then the final statement says deadlines extend only if evidence is mislabeled. So this one is a little bit circular, but they can do that. They can do whatever they want, and they do, right? So deadlines extend appeared early. So evidence mislabeled was the initial sufficient condition, but it's also the final necessary condition as well, meaning that in a sense, evidence mislabeled and deadlines extend are biconditional arrows of sorts, goes both directions, like if and only if from earlier. So the answer is in fact A, which a lot of folks got. I know that some folks were thinking D initially because of what I was saying earlier, how you can't go backwards on the arrow, but in this case, they are establishing that the arrows go both directions. So the answer here is A. Got a ton of folks saying it. Zuli got it, Osvaldo got it, Denisha, Passion, Valentina, Edward, TG Law. The answer is in fact A. Deadlines extend, therefore, evidence mislabeled. And you could get that only from the final clause. Deadlines extend only if evidence is mislabeled. That alone would be enough to tell you choice A. Everything prior to deadlines extend in the passage or the stimulus was there just to distract you. It had nothing to do with why choice A was right. In fact, it only served to make the other choices, like D, for example, more appealing. But that last phrase only, deadlines extend only if evidence is mislabeled, the last statement in the quotes, that alone tells you choice A. If you focus on that, you'll see why A is right. If you look at the whole thing, D starts to look more appealing because you're thinking I can't go backwards, but in this case, they establish it. Really tricky one. A lot of you got it. Fantastic. 25. In Better Call Saul, policy states, if a conflict arises, reassignment occurs. If reassignment occurs, oversight increases. Oversight increases only if documentation is incomplete. Oversight increases. What can we infer? A, documentation is incomplete. B, reassignment must have occurred. C, a conflict must have arisen. D, documentation is incomplete, but conflict may not have arisen. So what can we infer? Valentina asks, only if is a necessary statement? Yeah, so only if is a necessary condition indicator, meaning it functions like the arrow. All right, so we've got here a couple folks dropping answers in the chat. Some folks saying A, some folks saying D. A says documentation is incomplete. D says documentation is incomplete, but conflict may not have arisen. Some saying A, some saying D. I'll tell you what, that actually both of these are technically correct, but yes, TG Law says D feels more complete than A. So bonus points if you chose D, but A is technically an inference as well. But the reason that we have D there, conflict may not have arisen, that reflects the additional knowledge that we don't know whether conflict was arising or not, because oversight increases only guarantees documentation being incomplete. It doesn't tell us anything about whether conflict arises or not. So I'll say you get this one counted as correct. You get the points for this one if you chose A or D, but double points if you chose D because it's more comprehensive, like TG Law says, encompassing the fact that we don't know whether conflict arises or not. Super tricky, but you all got it. If you chose A or D, I'll give it to you. Out of these first 25, please drop in the chat how many you got right to give us a sense of where you stand currently. Did you get all of them right? Most of them right? Let us know where you're at here. Again, today's class is a bit tougher than some previous, like yesterday's reading comp, also a bit tougher than previous, but I'm responding to your requests for tougher LSAT drills so that you're not getting everything right. But well done, folks. We're on the right track here. Again, if you're new to formal logic, this is a pretty rough introduction, but as you do more of these, as you drill them, they will get easier over time. Passion got 19 so far. That's awesome. Osvaldo, 13 for 14. Edward, 19 for 25. Doing great, folks. I'd say at this point, if you got 2/3 or better, you're on the right track out of what you attempted. Valentina, 20 for 24. Fantastic. On to 26. In Legally Blonde, an intern claims only if a source is credible may its claim be accepted. Yet, she accepts a claim from an unverified fashion blog. Identify what's going on here. A, she applies credibility as the sole standard. B, she treats sufficient conditions as necessary. C, she accepts a claim without meeting her stated requirement. Or D, she rejects all unverified sources. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but do commit to an answer. Commit now because you'll have to commit on test day. So she claims only a credible source. Can you accept the claim? Then she takes a claim from something unverified. So there's a certain element there of perhaps hypocrisy. She's not acting in line with her statements. See some answers starting to come in here. Osvaldo says C. Passion says C. She accepts a claim without meeting her stated requirement. Valentina says C. Exactly right. So she's accepting a claim, but not meeting what she had stated or claimed earlier. TG Law says C. Exactly right. So her words and actions not lining up. Nice, folks. You got it. 27. In Suits, an associate says most partners approve the draft, then concludes, therefore, every partner supports the changes. Identify what's going on here. A, she infers a universal claim from a majority. B, she correctly interprets most as some. C, she treats some as none. Or D, she draws no conclusion from the premise. So identify what is going on here. The evidence was most. The conclusion is every. So we're going from here from most to all. I saw some folks saying choice C, she treats some as none, but actually I think she's treating most as all, right? So there's no none here. We're going to go with she infers a universal claim from a majority. Majority is most, universal is all. I see you all are getting it. Denisha says A, Edward says A, Zuli says A. Awesome. Osvaldo says A, Passion says A, Valentina says A. Exactly right, folks. The answer is A. She takes a majority to be all. She infers or draws a conclusion about universality, meaning all, only based on majority or most. So exactly right, folks. The answer is A. Well done. Universal, meaning every or all. Majority, meaning most. Number 28. In The Good Wife, an analyst notes none of the filings are late, then claims some filings must require extension. Identify what's going on here. A, she correctly infers mixed timelines. B, she infers an unsupported state requirement. C, she converts none into most. Or D, she denies all extensions by rule. So what can we infer based on this, or what can you identify what's going on here? So basically, analyze the statement and see what's going on in your opinion, right? So if none of them were late, does it make sense to say that some require extension? If none of them were late, I would think that you don't need extensions because you're good. If none were late, that means all of them were on time. So I see some folks saying A, where we have she correctly infers mixed timelines. And maybe some timelines were mixed, maybe some were early and some were on time, but regardless, none of them were late. So to me, I mean, her inference doesn't seem correct to me. Again, because if none of them were late, we're good. None of them need extensions. So she's making, in my view, she's making an improper or invalid inference. So I know a lot of folks chose A, but I'm going to say, in my view, A is not right. I see Osvaldo saying B now. TG Law is saying D. So D says she denies all extensions by rule. I don't see her denying extensions here. She's making a claim about the need for extensions. But as Osvaldo says in B, she infers an unsupported requirement. And Passion says B as well. It's unsupported because there's no evidence for it. We don't have a requirement or a need for extension because nothing was late. So in fact, B as in Bravo is the answer. Tricky, but B is the answer here. It's unsupported. Her claim is the inference that there's a requirement for extension, and that requirement, her claim is unsupported because everything was on time, nothing was late. So B is the answer. Tricky though. 29. In Law and Order, a consultant states, some interviews were incomplete, then concludes most interviews lacked sufficient detail. Identify what's going on here. A, she restricts some too narrowly. B, she overextends some into most. C, she infers none were complete. Or D, she equates most with all. So identify, in your view, what's going on in this passage or this argument. The evidence is some interviews were incomplete. The conclusion is most interviews lacked sufficient detail. So evidence is some, conclusion is most. I see folks dropping their answers in here. Awesome. We got Passion saying B, Edward saying B, Zuli saying B. Exactly right. She overextends, overgeneralizes. TG Law says B, also great. Some into most. Evidence is some, conclusion is most. Overgeneralizing, overextending, fantastic. Well done. Number 30, in Better Call Saul, a brief says, if a claim is admissible, it was authenticated. But the analyst concludes, if authenticated, then admissible. Identify what's going on here. Is there a flaw? If so, what is it? A, she maintains the correct direction of the conditional. B, she denies all authenticated claims. C, she commits the mistaken reversal. Or D, she applies a proper necessary condition. Identify the issue here. Is there a flaw? If so, what is it? So evidence was, the brief was admissible, then authenticated. Conclusion, authenticated, then admissible. So is she correct? Is there no flaw? I'd say no. So A says she maintains the correct direction. I know some folks are saying A, but there's a reversal here. Sufficient, admissible, authenticated, necessary in the original. Then in the conclusion, they get it backwards. Authenticated, then admissible. So it's not A, not the correct direction. It is choice C. She commits the mistaken reversal, improperly reversing necessary and sufficient conditions. A lot of folks got it. Awesome. Osvaldo says C. TG Law says C. Edward says C. The answer is in fact choice C. She commits the mistaken reversal, improperly confusing necessary and sufficient conditions. So C's our answer. Well done, folks. Out of these first 30 that we did, please drop in the chat how many you got right out of the ones that you did. If you did all 30, let us know if you got, say, 27 out of 30. If you did 28 of them, if you missed the first couple, how many you got right out of the first 28. We're doing these classes every day, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. Every Thursday, we're covering formal logic. Tomorrow, Friday, we're covering flaws, classic logical fallacies, identification of confusing, a lot of the flaws we covered today, like necessary, sufficient confusion, correlation, causation, ad hominem, circular reasoning. Same time, same place tomorrow, formal logic or flaws tomorrow here on the YouTube channel. If you find these classes helpful, please spread the word. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. And if you want to talk through your situation with your LSAT prep, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. Link below the video on YouTube, link in the bio on Instagram, pinned in the chat in the comments here as well on YouTube. I'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your participation. Same time, same place. Looking forward to it all. See you tomorrow.